Bang! Neeves Knives. I'm Jared, and today we are talking about the Work Sharp Precision Guided Sharpener again, with some more aftermarket attachments, even more than last time. Now, if you have the Work Sharp Precision Guided Sharpener, this might, be pretty easy for you to follow. If not, you might need to go back and watch some of my Work Sharp videos that I've already done. Now, what kind of attachments do we have here? And by the way, everything will be linked down in the description for you guys, or at least as much as possible. So, what attachments do we have here? First of all, we have the base holders. This goes up underneath the base because without this, when you're sharpening, the tiniest bit of pressure makes this flex. So what winds up happening is your edges are very hard to keep consistent because it's very hard to use the exact same pressure always. So using this to put right up underneath the clamp, I usually just do it just like this. I hold it with my hands just like that, and I keep it at the same height always, so that when I need to flip it, I just pull it out, flip this, put it right back on top, and I hold it just like that, and I push it right back in, and that way it never is going up and down. These are adjustable, so you can adjust it to the exact height that you want. These are both the exact same, just different colors. Now that is, in my opinion, very helpful, extremely helpful. I highly recommend these. Now, the next part we have is the stone holder, which I've done videos on the stone holders before. This one's the best one yet. And I say that because you can use 4 inches or 6-inch stones on this. So regardless if you have only a 4-inch plate or a 4-inch stone of whatever kind, or a 6-inch stone, you can use this holder. And we're going to go over my most recommended stones and everything here shortly. But this attachment makes it to where all you do is you just adjust this, and it extends out to the length you want, between 4 and 6 inches. That is fantastic because almost every single sharpening stone out there comes in either a 4-inch or 4-inch or 6-inch stone. And sometimes you can find one or the other. Usually most stones, regardless if they're Arkansas, ATOMA, VENEV, they all come in 4 and 6-inch stones, but sometimes it's hard to find one or the other. So this way it makes it to where you have them. Now we'll go over more about that here in a second. This is for recurves. So basically you can use whatever film you want, 3M or whatever sandpaper you want, and you can wedge it in right here on the side, and you wrap it around. This is magnetic, and then you fold it all the way around and then fold it around this edge, pushing it really hard, or creasing it around the edge, and then slap this back on, and then this will go on your rod so that you can do recurves. Now this little attachment is for scissors, and basically this little mouthpiece goes right inside the clamp, and you can just clamp this down on this, and then you can adjust these to hold your scissors. I haven't had the best results from this, but they do work. I find that usually it just gives you mostly a micro bevel because the adjustment just doesn't go high enough for it, but it does depend on your scissors. So there's lots of different scissors out there, and it just depends. But you can always try it out on your scissors to see what kind of results you get if you want to try it. Next is the base holder. Now this is a base holder to hold it to the table so that you can have like a heavy blade in here, because sometimes when you have a heavy blade and you start sharpening, what happens? It leans forward, and it does make it to where you can just keep it in one single place right on the edge of your table. It's easy to install. It goes right on, and you just slip it right underneath and screw in the screws. Now The one problem is it is a little bit flexible, and you do have to adjust it to the exact, you know, playing with each screw and figure out exactly where all the best tension spots are. But once it's installed, you can leave it or you can take it off. But it does work really good for holding down the base and stopping it from moving all over the place or falling or leaning forward if you have a heavy blade in the clamp. So these parts basically help fix some of the issues that the work sharp has, you know, because it is limited. And then also some parts take it to the next level where it is way more versatile and does way more than provided by work sharp. Now let's talk a little bit more about this stone holder really quick. So you take your rod, take your O-ring off, and you slip it on. Now, one of the issues with the 6-inch stones is that you almost can't use the entirety of the stone. However, what you can do is you can take the O-ring off of the end right here. You can slip that off. And what it'll do is it'll make it to where you can extend it out farther. Now, you don't want to let it go, because if you do, it can slip off the edge of your knife. So you want to make sure that after you're done, you maybe slip this back on or just let it rest on the edge or however you want. But just know that in order to use the entirety of the 6-inch stone, you either have to take that off and try to use the whole thing. And in that case, you still might not be able to hit like 1 or 2 inches of it. So you might want to flip it every once in a while so that you hit the entirety of the stone. There's so many different stones. You can get just about every stone in 4 or 6, like I was saying before. Now, the stones that I recommend the most, above all, are going to be diamond plates, which you can get, you know, between basically a 50 grit all the way up to like however, you know, high you want to go. However, for the polishing stones and things like that, if you're wanting to do a polish and you're wanting really fine edges, I recommend getting VENEV stones. Now, yes, you can get ceramic plates. There's lots of different options here, and there's lots of variables. But my most recommended would be ATOMA diamond plates and VENEV diamond stones. You can get them in the 4 or 6. This is the greater dog, but you can get the dog series, which is the same size as this ATOMA stone right here. It's the same size as this, just, you know, wider like this. It's thick, but not as wide. This is the greater dog, which is wider. It's basically a 4-inch version of this stone. Now, these stones are expensive to an extent, but not really, because they last a very, very, very long time. Now, these diamond plates, they are even more expensive in some cases. There's cheaper versions, it just depends, because there's lots of different diamond plates. The ATOMAs are pretty expensive, but they don't last nowhere near as long. However, they're a lot more aggressive. So for reprofiling and removing steel very fast, I do recommend getting, whether it's ATOMA or something else, regardless, very low grits of diamond. So get like 100 grit. This is a 140. I love this 140. ATOMAs are very, very aggressive, and it makes it to where you can reprofile very fast. Now, you don't want to finish on this stone. You'd want to go either to your next diamond stone, which would be like a 300 grit, and then a 600, and then a 1200, or you can move to the VENEV stones. Now, what VENEV stones do I recommend? I recommend getting 3, because each one are double-sided. So that would be 6 stones altogether. Now, these are the ones that I got, and I'm going to show them to you so you guys can take a picture. And now these come in the 4-inch stones too. All you're paying attention to is this. Dual-sided, 80 plus 150. Next one would be, it'd be this one right here. 240 plus 400. Now, that's not grit. That's their interpretation of grit. It's like an F series. I'll explain the grits here in a second. And then the 8 and 1200. So the 1200 is basically like 5,000 grit. The 800 is like right around 3,000 or something like that. And then the 400 is like 1200 grit. The 240 is around 600 grit. And then these are really low grits. Like, what is it? I forget, like 150 and 300 or something like that. But even though they are very low grits, they're still not hyper aggressive like you might want if you're going to be doing lots of reprofiling or really thick edges. So in that case, you're going to want diamonds. They're diamonds too, but you know what I mean. A diamond plate, not a resin bonded diamond. Now, there's also lots of other stones. You can go with all diamond plates and one ceramic. If you go up to 1200 grit and diamond, you can get a ceramic plate, which will also get you a mirror polish. Or you can, there's lots of different ways to go about this. But my most recommended are VENEVs because they last so long. And they're pretty easy to work with, but you will have to condition them. You're going to have to get a stone to clean them with, and I will link one down in the description. But basically there's lots of different versions. You can get an aluminum oxide stone, you can get silica powder, which then you put it on a flat surface, put the powder, put a little water, and then you just stir it around until it's nice and flat. There's lots of videos on flattening stones and conditioning stones, so you might want to look up one of those videos if you're confused on how to clean the stone. It's very easy. You're basically just scratching the surface back to flat. That's all you're doing is cleaning. Like, see how we have it's dark? That stuff needs to come off eventually. Now, a lot of times you can just rinse it off, but sometimes you need an aluminum oxide stone or some sort of cleaning stone to just scrub the top of it. It's not really too big of a deal of which one you use. Sometimes I like to use multiples. I'll use like somewhat of a coarse stone, and then I'll move my way to like a fine aluminum oxide stone. I have lots of stones that I clean with, so really quickly I'm going to show you guys how I clean my VENEV stones. So you can get an aluminum oxide stone, double-sided stone. They're really cheap. I'm going to link some down below. You can also use one of these little guys. I use these for like in between really cleaning. So like say I notice there's some buildup, I'll give it a couple scratches, rinse it off, and then keep sharpening. But then when they build up a little too much, I like to use one of my big stones. This was like 10 bucks. This was a double-sided aluminum oxide water stone that I took apart. It was originally just one stone that was double-sided, and I took it apart and I used this to basically finish them because this is a little coarser than these. And then I just finished cleaning them. I wet them down, soak them down, and I just scrub them at the sink. And this is nice and flat, so I can make sure that it comes out nice and flat. And since these are a little more softer, they're less aggressive on the diamonds. You never want to use diamonds to clean diamonds. Use aluminum oxide. Now, like I said, there's a ton of different ways to do this. Some people like to use silica powder on a piece of glass, you know, so they can make sure it's ultra flat. I don't mind using just some flat aluminum oxide stones. Lay it on there and scrub it back and forth until the surface is nice and clean. You can take a pencil and scribe a pencil like in an S pattern so that when you start flattening it, you can make sure you get rid of the entire pencil, making sure you hit every corner, getting it nice and flat. These don't warp too much, so it's not really about flattening. It's mostly about conditioning and bringing up the diamonds, because when you use the aluminum oxide stone and you clean it off, you're basically knocking down the resin, making the diamonds come out of the surface, so your diamonds are exposed. That's basically the main idea with these. That's why you want to make sure you use aluminum oxide. I'll link a few down in the description for you guys. Any one of them will work, but like I said, I do get a little bit better finish sometimes when I use something a little bit more coarse, not extra coarse or anything. This is, you know, just basically like a medium grit water stone, and then I use it more of a finer water stone. This was for basically like chef knives. It's you know, kind of a softer water stone that's made out of aluminum oxide. Now, if you're going to get diamond plates, I recommend the 140, the 300, the 600, and the 1200 for diamond plates. Now, you don't necessarily need them if you have the VENEV stones, but I still recommend getting a low grit diamond stone. And if you're going to want the recurve recurve attachment, you're going to want to get some sort of sandpapers that go up in grit too. You know, something like from 150 grit, maybe 200 grit, up to 1200 grit, or even higher. You can go all the way up to thousands of, you know, grit, or very low microns, 2 micron, 1 micron. You can get 3M. You might want to get them, you know, in little packs of squares, or possibly however you want. You can cut them out to fit. It's pretty versatile. It's pretty simple too. Start with a low grit, work your way up to a fine grit. You do have to have a little bit of knowledge on how to sharpen and how to get a burr. I've got many videos on that, but in this case, we're just talking about the attachments and what they're for and what they do. Now, also for recurves, you could just get round stones. There are round stones. They're ceramic, aluminum oxide, different kinds of round stones. And just use, you know, just have it hold it. Now, another thing I highly recommend is a digital angle finder, because if you're going to be switching from different stones, this is going to change angles depending on how thick the stone is and everything else. So, you know, that's something I highly recommend. Now, you can use your phone, but it doesn't work as good, and the digital ones have a magnet on them, and they magnetize right to the rod, so you can get a perfect angle, or, you know, you can get different angles very, very easily without thinking too much about it. You know, if you switch stones and one stone is thicker than the other, it's going to raise it up, and you'll be able to tell, and then you can adjust it to match the angle that the original stone was at. I'm going to show you guys again really quick, just in case if you're confused on which stones to get. So these are in order. Take a picture if you want, but you see we have 165 micron slash 160 micron slash 125 micron, 50 slash 40 micron. And then this one is the same as this stone. It's just that's the way I had to get it. 50 slash 40 micron, 20 slash 14 micron. And each one of these numbers is the micron rating for one side. So like this one right here, we have the 7 slash 5 micron, which is right here, and the 3 slash 2 micron, which is this, which is going to be their 800 and their 1200. So there's actually 3 different numbers for each stone, and I know it's super confusing. I like to just pay attention to the micron rating. So these low numbers, so if I grab one of these, the low numbers are the micron rating. So I don't know about the low numbers, but you see the F series, this is like their version of grit, their F rating of grit, F400, F240. Now what that is this is the 20 slash 14 micron. Then this side is 50 slash 40 micron. Basically, this is like 500 grit. Then this one's like 1200 grit. So what you do is you take and you put the micron rating into, you can just take one of these numbers, 20 slash 14. So you take 20, put it into Google and say 20 micron into grit, or 14 micron into grit, and it'll give you the number of the grit if you're confused on what the grit you're at is, and if you're really wanting to pay attention to grit. Or you can just pay attention to the micron rating, which they already give you on the stone. But I know that can be very confusing. All in all, my most recommended are these and the stone holder, because you can get little stones for recurves if you really want to. You can get skinny stones, round stones, whatever. Now, if you're doing a lot of recurves, then I do recommend getting one of these, because this is going to definitely be easier, more efficient than using the stones, most likely, just because it's already round. You can change your grit. It's going to work a lot easier for you if you if you're planning on using it for a lot of recurves. This is going to help you get your edges very consistent, nice and flat. Try to stay with the same pressure still, but it'll make it a lot easier for you because you won't have as much flex in the jaw. Now this, I recommend it if you are using lots of heavy blades, or if you're sharpening, if you do have a problem with it leaning forward. Because remember, once you have the blade in here and then you have a stone in here, that's a lot of weight on the front of this. But if you tend to hold on to it anyways, it's not that, or if you want to be able to turn it and things like that, then you might not care about that. But I'll say this, when you do have it hooked up onto the table, you don't have to use two hands no more. You can just use one hand. So if you're one-handed, this will work really good. Or if you want to be able to just to do a one-handed, you want to get one of these for sure. The scissor holder, I'm not a big fan of it, but you know, I know how to freehand, so I might be a little different than most. So I don't have a problem just freehanding my scissors. But if you do have a problem holding angles and stuff, the scissor guide might be good for you. Certain scissors are not going to work as well as others. So it does depend on the scissors you are sharpening. Now, there you guys go. Thank you guys for watching. I love you guys. Peace.